Pen, and we are good to go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your tropical update. It is Monday, May 13th, 2024, already approaching the halfway mark of May. Hurricane season is more or less knocking on our door, especially if you reside somewhere in Central America or Mexico on the Eastern Pacific side. Today is going to be a more or less overall update, generalized update. As the thumbnail implies, we do have an area of interest. You can kind of more or less see what's going on out there in the Eastern Pacific. Lots of thunderstorm and really good convective activity firing up along our Pacific monsoonal trough, helping to create a little bit more increased precipitation or rainfall coverage for the likes of Central America, to include Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras. El Salvador, it looks like, is getting some thunderstorm activity right along the coastline, and as is Panama, I should say. The Atlantic side of things, however, is very quiet. And to tell you the truth, it's disappointing. I'm already seeing a lot of our other sources out there talking preseason development. And I'd posted a video yesterday, which, first of all, before we go any further, ladies out there, happy Mother's Day, happy belated Mother's Day. I hope everyone out there who was celebrating in one way, shape, or form had a phenomenal end to the weekend and a beautiful start to the week. Thank you very much for joining us out there, all you lovely mothers out there. I hope you enjoyed every single second you had with your loved ones, especially the kiddos, surrounding yourselves with family and friends. Father's Day will be coming right along very soon as we start wandering into hurricane season. So Father's Day could be a little more anticipated, a little more exciting. Not trying to throw anything out there, but you never know, in the weather sphere anyways. We'll give it a little while for some folks to join. I just realized that my chat window is not open. Do we have anyone in the chat? No, it doesn't look like we have anybody in the chat right now. Unless the chat is not working? That's interesting, I guess. All right, let's go ahead and let's get started. Let me close the chat real quick and then open it back up. No, yeah, wow, look at that. So we don't have anybody to chat with. That's very interesting. But alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, before we move further into tropical land, what I want to address is this, because I'm also seeing a lot of folks going, all kinds. I'm not going to use some other kind of language there. Other folks are getting very excited, we'll say, for all this activity that's poised to go on across the Gulf coastline, from Texas initiation barreling all the way through. And I truthfully think that Florida is once again a little underestimated. And I promise, folks, for you guys tuning in for Tropics, please just stick with me. Just ride out the live stream. I promise we're only going to spend maybe 3 minutes on this. And the only reason I bring this up is because we might end up with an opportunity to chase here in Central Florida. So we've seen this increase over the last 24 hours. We've gone from a level 2 risk, pretty much generalized across the upper Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico coastline from Texas all the way through to the Florida Panhandle. We now have a level 3 enhanced risk, which makes a lot of sense. A lot of our models are doing a fantastic job of highlighting these waves, if you will, these line echo wave patterns that are expected to just barrel through along the coastline, almost working in a totally zonal fashion west to east, before it actually helps to instigate even greater sea breeze activity for the state of Florida. If you look on the satellite imagery here, you can already see widespread nocturnal convection that's been self-sustaining, moving through the likes of Alabama, Mississippi, just exiting Louisiana, where we saw quite a bit of frivolous flood activity. Unfortunately, I believe I saw a flash flood emergency amongst other flash flood warnings in effect for a lot of our areas down there. Texas, Louisiana, you guys are done with the rain. Like, you guys, and I don't mean that as in you're finished. There's more coming, unfortunately, but I'm saying more in the sense figuratively, you're finished with the rain. You guys have gotten your fill. We are no longer even concerned about drought conditions down there, and it's a shame that it's just going to continue to buffet that area. And before we move any further, just want to take you through a little bit of the simulated reflectivity, which is why I'm wondering if we might have an opportunity to give you guys some more chase content. If you look, there's our stuff that's going on right now that's just going to continue to move across the southeast, really re-intensifying thanks to our Gulf of Mexico water. This is not going to be unusual. The Gulf of Mexico, guys, and I'll show you that early in the brief so we can talk about it because that relates to the tropics as well. Gulf of Mexico is ready to rock. We, for all intents and purposes, don't have any more cool anomalies out there. We are at 26, 27 degrees Charlie, that infamous 80 to 82 degree Fahrenheit that you need for cyclogenesis of our tropical cyclones. It's there. And that's exactly why we're seeing a little bit more of that carry over into our thunderstorms along the coast. If you look at the radar here, it does a fantastic job of showing how these individualized cells are tapping in to all that warm, unstable air that's just being produced by our Gulf of Mexico that's essentially boiling. metaphorically at this point. And if you look, the Rufus model gives a very, very strong vote of confidence that if you're visiting the attractions today, you might want to look out, because it looks like we're going to have a pretty gnarly sea breeze collision brought in by not only what's moving in from the west, but our general sea breeze flow in from the east coast. And it's given Orlando, right around the Four Corners area in particular, a very high vote of confidence. We're going to see some strong stuff pop open. The HRRR is doing much of the same. If we look at the most latest run, you can see that sea breeze activate pretty much dead center. Now, this right here is textbook Florida. 100%. We've seen a little bit of a westward bias in our sea breeze, probably because our continental shelf waters on the west coast were taking a little bit more time to warm up in contrast to what we have on the east coast with the Gulf Stream. Now you can see that's another sign that our Gulf of Mexico is warm. We're now meeting right in the middle, and this is what I'm very familiar with as a Floridian. Every day almost during the late spring into the summertime, sea breeze, severe thunderstorm somewhere, special weather statement somewhere, lightning up the yin-yang everywhere. We're going to be watching for all of our folks down there. If you follow me on TikTok, I would definitely recommend tuning in there. We're probably not going to be doing any live streaming on here because I know everybody else on YouTube who loves the tornadoes and whatnot is going to be live, so they'll have you covered down. TikTok, we're going to be posting repetitive updates, as will we on Instagram. And I'm getting more active on X. I've got a lot of people now suddenly following me on X, and I love it, to include a few of the main tropical scientists out there, and Dr. Reed Timmer actually dropped me a follow, which felt pretty good. But anyways, that's what we have going on in the Southeast. The Southeast is going to be the exciting area this time around. We don't really have too much happening over the Great Plains, the Midwest, the Great Lakes. We had a little bit of leftover activity pop off yesterday, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get into the tropics. So as the thumbnail implies, for folks just joining us, Alex Baller, hello there, Gary, Joseph Parton, Incognito, Hydra47, Judy Toko, Sabrina Marshall, and Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer. Good to see everybody this morning. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. I hope everything's great over there, unless you reside in the areas being buffeted by that MCC area that's moving through in Alabama and Mississippi. Let's get into our tropical update, which also, by the way, another fun fact, did you guys happen to glance at the aurora over the weekend? Drop it in the chat if you guys saw the aurora, or if you're watching after this stream has concluded, drop me a comment. Let me know if you saw the aurora. We saw it well down here into Central Florida, which was amazing. I still want to go up to Alaska to realize, the more bona fide aurora borealis, the northern lights as they call it, but it was very cool that for the first time in history, a lot of folks didn't have to worry about traveling. You just walk outside and there you have it. Beautiful evening. So this is what we're watching. This is our area of interest, and I have not really elevated my confidence with this just yet, to tell you the truth. I'm still sitting at about a 30 to 40 percentile with this, just because we have not seen too much in the way of significant trends in terms of, dialing in the intensity, dialing in the track, dialing in the point of origin, the date and time of origin, or formation, I should say. I'm ready to elevate it to about a 40-50% chance because our models are singing in tune. The Canadian model, the Icon, the GFS, and the Euro, albeit very wishy-washy and doing its usual conservative business, unfortunately. And the reason I say unfortunately is the Euro, this is going to be an excellent first forecast of our Pacific hurricane season that'll translate wonderfully over to the Atlantic, because if we can nail down outliers and, anomalies in our forecast models, that'll do us wonders when we get time to start forecasting for our cyclones that could potentially be more impactful. So I would say, if I had to give you a general idea of my confidence, I'd go 30 to about 50% right here. More or less, right around a general average, or the mean being about 40% within the next 7 days, we will see development out of this. We're already starting to see the thunderstorms really kicking up. We're starting to see a lot of thunderstorm activity out there, and what that's going to do is help to kind of create some localized areas of low pressure, and that's what the models are thinking could help spin something up. And the reason I'm putting so much emphasis into this is, if you guys remember, and I'm sure you do, Acapulco, Mexico, sitting right in through here. Or I think somewhere right in this general quadrant, forgive me. It's hard to see on this map because I can't really tell what the geographic features are, but essentially Acapulco, Mexico, right in through there, obviously still recovering from the likes of Otis, unfortunately, and we're starting to see some model indications that it could try to move up like this. It could develop into a low, mid-grade tropical storm. Tropical storm Aletta is the first named storm out there for the Eastern Pacific, and I'm noticing that there's a lot of windshield wipering going on. The GFS has been back and forth doing something like this and then doing something like this. The Canadian model was doing something like this, and then there goes Willow. She's saying hi to everybody again. Cat butt in the camera. Excuse that. And then going back to this iteration. The Icon has been a bit more confident that regardless, we're going to see some sort of a northern tug if it suddenly jogs west or just makes landfall. So we have a lot of fairly reliable models indicating some sort of tropical genesis out there. The Euro has been being silly. I don't know why. The Euro has no vote of confidence that this is going to be anything more than a tropical disturbance that becomes a rainmaker. We'll wait and see, and then we'll take you through, because we have a lot to cover, and I don't want to waste too much time just looking at the satellite. Intertropical convergence zone in the Atlantic. If you guys notice, live stream to live stream, we are lifting up. If I'm not mistaken, a couple live streams ago, or this time last week, we had seen that this ITCZ was suppressed fairly off to the south. And that was mainly because of our Saharan dust. And you can still see it out there. We do have a little bit of sun glint right there. Just this nice little white blob or gray blob that's almost mirroring the ocean there. That is definitely sun glint from the sun itself. But that is all still dust that's moving across. And you can see the very big difference right in through here, this little delineation line. You can see we go to more closed cell stratocumulus clouds out there. And then you have your open cell cumulus here because that dust is getting in there and preventing a lot of that condensation. So cool stuff. You can kind of track where the Saharan dust layer is. We probably have a lot more of it still impeding on the Caribbean as well. In fact, it does look like we have a lot of open cell cumulus out there in the Caribbean Ocean. Not a whole lot of activity to worry about. So, and you know, to wrap everything into a nice bundle, in terms of the overall Atlantic basin, I'm at like a 0 to 2% chance we're going to get anything before June 1st, to tell you the truth. We've lost a lot of our signals almost altogether that anything is going to form before we hit the good old June 1st. And, you know, I'll tell you the truth, I felt fairly confident that we were going to see something. I'm not too sure if it's still El Nino's residual effects, because El Nino is gone. We are no longer in an El Nino, and I will fight tooth and nail defending that statement. I don't know if it's still residual El Nino effects that are coming across, preventing a lot of moisture from wrapping around into the Caribbean or letting the ITCZ flow north. It could also be an effect of our Saharan air layer. Ooh, pardon me. I needed that. It could be a result of the Saharan dust. Hi, mamas. It could be the Saharan dust layer that's also working its way through, stopping a whole lot of activity from really getting going. And when I say activity, I just mean generalized thunderstorms, garden variety convection out there. Because if we don't have any moisture, if we don't have any energy out there, then naturally it's not going to develop any kind of moist air influx or intrusion, just like we have dry air intrusion. If we don't have the moisture, first of all, we're not going to have any vorticity, we're not going to have low pressure, we're not going to have any waves, we're not going to have any perturbations, whatever you want to put on the table. So right now, the Gulf of Mexico is very quiet, the Caribbean is very quiet, the whole Atlantic, for all intents and purposes, is very quiet. The Guianas are seeing a little bit of that convective blow-off from the ITCZ as it tries to lift to the north, and that's what's also helping to spill on over into our Pacific monsoonal trough. So everything is working, everything is doing its thing, we're marinating, but nothing's happening. And I've noticed a video, and I'm not going to disclose who it was, but there's a video that is currently trending. It has quite a bit of views about tropical activity right in through here using the 300 plus hour of the GFS. We all know 300 hours plus, even 200 hours plus, the GFS is a huge misnomer. It's a huge, I don't know about this. You look at that and use it as 1% of your forecast, and the rest of the 99% comes from other sources, and the other 99% are not doing anything. And even the good old GFS, the Goofus model, has dropped all signals of that as well. So that forecast is more than likely not going to verify. Just not a whole lot happening out there. We are still continuing to see, if you look at our latest European probabilities, this is straight from the European model's website. I love to look at this because it really helps us to kind of nail down where we should be watching. I think this is a great second look or second page. As we look at the general overview, we're going to switch over to where it is that we should be monitoring. Willow, please don't put your butt on the keyboard. You can stay. There we go. That's perfect. Okay. Thank you. I don't want you to accidentally close the live stream. In recent years, the subtropics have been much warmer than average, and we've seen storms form and maintain strength pretty far north. As of now, subtropics seems more average to slightly clear. Brian Rowe, I do agree with that. Zenful, welcome in. Chicken Run Aficionado, CFS on June 4th. We'll get there, and so do I. I love that Willow's starting to make a little bit more of a presence in our live streams. She's like my secondary microphone. So the reason I like to move right into this as a secondary model or a second piece of this live briefing is because this helps us to identify where it is that we should be watching. And we're still looking, we're still watching, and that's another reason why I'm not too sure why so many people are focusing on what could possibly happen up here, because all the signals are still down in the southern and western Caribbean, something trying to wander its way over the Centam landmass like so and slingshot itself up. We're still seeing, as of the latest 12Z model run, we'll get another update later this afternoon, that towards the very tail end of May, and then especially into June, that we still have some pretty good favorability out there with a little bit of an indication, or MDR may try to do something as well as the wind shear begins to relax finally, because that's what's going to happen as our ITCZ comes north and begins to work its way up. The wind shear is going to also go with it. We're going to see it lift from here, and it's going to start moving up towards the subtropics, the mid-latitudes, as well as the fact that El Nino is gone. We're going to have a lot more of that favorability finally make its way or make its presence known in the Gulf and in the Caribbean. In terms of overall genesis, where we should be watching, I have not looked at this. To tell you the truth, I completely forgot. I added this to my tab look. I should probably start looking at this a little bit more often. But there you go. Look at how much confidence we have that there's going to be something developing right after we get into the Eastern Pacific hurricane season. You can see on the 17th, we keep that same general look. On the 18th, we keep that same general look. And then there goes what could potentially be Tropical Storm Aletta right in through there. Then there's the 20th. And notice how even these Euro ensembles want to try to drag something closer to the coastline. So we're going to be watching that very closely. We don't need this early of an impact down there, especially as the Eastern Pacific gets going. The harsh truth is, with El Nino, the residual El Nino effects, still some lingering warm waters. The Enzo regions are very cold at this point, but there is some really, really hot water out there still. We're about 30 to 31 degrees right in that pocket, that little corner of the world. So I do think we're going to have some early Eastern Pacific activity before La Nina, as she creeps in through July, August, and September, can start to suppress that. Once La Nina really begins to show itself and those cooler anomalies take over, we'll lose all that really, I guess you could say, that instigation of our Pacific monsoonal trough. Any kind of perturbation that tries to wander its way out of there will start to wash out. And then if you fast forward towards the back end of the run and we go towards the latter half of May, I'm noticing some signals off of our east coast, but again, the Euro probabilities don't give us a whole lot of confidence that the Caribbean's going to do anything. So I'm watching this, but this is more than likely going to be extratropical. It usually always is. I really don't think we're going to see much develop out here. And also, disclaimer, 2 more days and we start getting our National Hurricane Center outlooks. So we'll see exactly if they decide to stamp a little yellow blip out there or not, and that'll more or less seal the deal for many. I know that once we get a yellow blip, everybody's going to jump on board and the YouTube sphere is going to be flooded. Uh-oh, first storm, here it comes. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you guys have been paying attention to what is out there this entire time, it's been talking to us for over a week now. Here's a look at our latest ensembles. I'd like to roll right into this as well to see if those general source regions that were highlighted by our European probabilities are doing anything. And you can see the Euro still not a whole lot associated with what's going on down here. We only have maybe half a dozen to just a little over half a dozen members, if that, predicting a very weak tropical cyclone trying to form up. And I am noticing that even though I don't really think that this is going to form into something tropical, we're getting more and more agreement out here. Lots more agreement for a low end, some kind of cyclonic circulation to move out there and up towards the mid-latitude. So we'll just continue to watch that. Same thing with our good old friend, the GFS. If you look through here, even the GFS is really backed off on the Caribbean. I'll swoop through the time frame, and you can see very, very towards the tail end, we get some ensemble agreement, but nothing nearly worth paying close attention to, at least right now. And not only that, but that's right as we roll into June. Just to tell you the truth, if you look at the 0Z without me moving, this is the very tail end of the run. We have 3 ensemble members of the 20-some-odd members that we have for the GFS. Not a whole big vote of confidence. You can never really trust the 18 and the 6Z as well. If you come back to the 18Z yesterday, notice, again, the GFS gets a little more aggressive. You come to the 6Z today, it gets even more aggressive, calling for a Cat 1, maybe even a Category 2 ensemble member, predicting that the Cayman Islands, Cuba, and the Southern Bahamas could get whacked with something. I'm not really feeling it. I'm not vibing with it, however you want to describe it. I don't really feel this model too much. Is it worth paying attention to? Absolutely, because again, if you look at the timestamp, this is the 29th of May, so regardless, I'm just going to continue looking down in that area. I'm going to keep looking, even if my confidence is very low and I'm not as internally excited to watch for something to spin up on our models, I'm still paying close attention. It's not like I'm going to forget about it altogether. If you come on over to the GEPs, the Canadian ensembles, you'll notice that we have lost quite a bit of confidence in the Caribbean as well. There you go in the Eastern Pacific, really good confidence that something's going to develop out there. But then as you get towards the back end, this is May 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, not a whole lot in our Caribbean. You go all the way to the tail end, you get a little whisper of maybe one or two members of the Canadian model highlighting something. But again, like I said, very low confidence. There's no pattern signal here. There's no pattern to pick up on. Pattern recognition is a big part of mid to long range tropical forecasting, any forecasting for that matter. And if there really isn't a repetitive pattern to watch for in the big picture and down into the little picture, then, you really can't go too crazy. And that's why I'm a little astonished that already these pages with a bigger following than this one are out here saying, look out, and they're going big too. They're not saying depression, disturbance, wave. They're going full on, we're going to get Alberto. And I'm kind of tired of that, because there really isn't any evidence to bring to the table. The folks who have brought evidence to the table have looked at one run of the GFS and brought up the fact that our climatology models are indicating lots of moisture. And I'll tell you right now, I feel bad for saying this because I was on board with it too. There's really not a lot of moisture out there. So the MDR and the Caribbean are going to have to get its act together if we're going to start to see that moisture blossoming out there, just as all of our models have mentioned for June, July. May was expected to be fairly quiet. If we go back to our climatology models, May had indicated we could see some moisture down in the southern Caribbean, which lines up with our convection over northern South America, CENTAM, and the Pacific monsoonal trough. But as of right now, we are very, very quiet. We are very, very suppressed. We have maybe some daytime convection that fires up over our mountains, but nothing big out there as a result of our thunderstorm coverage. Here is the CFS, as I forget who it was who brought it up. Let me go back in the chat real quick. Chicken Run Aficionado. Let's take a look at the latest CFS. We'll go to the 13th at 0Z, and we'll scroll through time. Even the CFS guys, the CFS is not a very good model when you want to try to look at individualized systems. To give you a general overview, yeah, it's not bad. But to give you an idea of where you want to watch for specific development, especially the timing, not so much. It's just kind of a general takeaway. And if you look, as we get towards the back end of May, we don't really have much going on out there. We get a little weak spin up right there, some moisture, but notice the timestamp. This is already the 23rd of May, 24th of May, and then it's gone. Let's go forward in time a little bit more. You can see the Eastern Pacific. If you guys can see on your side of the screen, Eastern Pacific is going. We have lots of moisture out there. We have low pressure after low pressure. Some of our models, even the last couple of days, they kind of brought up the idea or the theory that we could have a double barrel setup out there with Aletta's potential disturbance trying to move up, and then right behind her in hot pursuit, there have been some indications that another area of vorticity at 850, 700 may try to unveil itself in that big cluster of convection, and that's not very rare. That's not completely out of the realm of, possibility. Do I think that's going to happen that quickly? I don't have a big vote of confidence on that. I'm not very excited about it. But could that happen? If we have enough strong thunderstorm activity out there right over the monsoonal trough, yeah, absolutely. Now this is the fateful arrival of June 1st. And I've noticed that the signals have transitioned to June 1st, and even this looks very lackluster. Wow. The last couple of model runs had some stuff popping off in June, but even early June does not look very, very all that enlightening. Could possibly have some stuff wander its way out of the Caribbean. It looks like our MDR is going to start to wake up. So that's the big thing. If I had to give you guys a key takeaway here is we need to watch the intensity of our high pressure still like we have been, and we'll need to watch as the western extent of our ITCZ does this weird folding effect into the Caribbean, because once we can start to get more energy and more moisture in there, then we open up the floodgates of now we'll have to watch as each of these things move through, because there's always that possibility. But even the CFS, Eastern Pacific, yeah, definitely. Tropical side, the Atlantic side of things, not too much. Some very faint hints and whispers that maybe something will try to wander its way through. Still nothing from the hurricane season from the East Pac or the Atlantic. Not there yet. We have 3 more days, 2 more days. Today is the 13th, so on the 15th, first thing in the morning, we might have a yellow blip out here. We'll have to wait and see. And that's perfect. It lines up wonderfully with our next tropical update, so we'll actually be able to lead with our National Hurricane Center homepage once again. Here is the GFS. So let's go down here and take a look at what everyone was hyping up, because that's what everyone loves to do this time of year. If you scroll through, and I'll go very carefully, I'm not going to go very fast through the loop. If you scroll through time, you can see down here our wet season is really kicking into full force. Severe weather action might be a thing on a repetitive basis, just like it was for the Great Plains for a little while down here for our Mid-Atlantic, the Southern Plains, Dixie Alley, and the Southeast. Look at all this moisture down here in the Eastern Pacific. That is definitely a telltale sign of something. And then there goes the GFS developing Tropical Storm Aletta right around the same time. It's doing fairly good. I'll say fairly decent in terms of its run-to-run consistency. And this does line up with other models as well. I'll show you here in a second. But if you notice, out there in the Caribbean, and this is the 6Z, so take it with an even bigger grain of salt, we start to see some moisture acting up, and then we get a little something out there, but, you know, this is exactly what I was talking to you guys about before. Okay, I know you guys can sit here and tell me, uh-oh, there is something there, guys, or there is something there, David. What are you talking about that there's nothing on the models? Yes, but let me show you a thing or two about our lovely GFS. If I go to 0Z, nothing. And it looks like a large majority of our moisture is back over here now. If I go to the 18Z last night at the same time, nothing. If I go to the 12Z yesterday, nothing. Go all the way to the end, nothing out there. Now we're looking at development possibly out here, way out over into the central Atlantic, up to the north, trying to get into our subtropics, just to the southeast of Bermuda. I know that there's a little low pressure right there, but again, 384 hours out, and this thing keeps going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The GFS is doing what it does best. It's spitting out our phantom storms, and I really need all you guys out there who also have weather pages to please just calm it down a little bit. I know we're all waiting for this historic, extreme, hyperactive, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of hyperbole and a lot of metaphors out there. I'm even sick of that as well. Every hurricane season forecast, every single one of them. Hyper! Are you talking about like a sugar rush hyper, or are you talking about like development? And I really wish that a lot of these big channels who have a huge viewer base would stop talking so much about number of storms. We need to be communicating the fact that storms could develop in areas that they did not at all last hurricane season. And again, like I've been talking since last hurricane season, the moment we do get something that forms here or here or here, the sky's the limit in terms of landfall. There's no way in heck that if anything forms in our Caribbean, it's going to just do this and spin around until it dies and not do anything. If anything wanders up into the Gulf of Mexico, it's not going to suddenly just get vaporized by an invisible force field as it wanders up towards the Gulf Coast. Somebody's getting hit. And I wish that we would stop mentioning simply the number of named storms and start emphasizing developmental possibilities in areas that were completely untapped last year, because it's been a year now. There's a lot of folks out there along the Gulf Coast of Mexico and Central America who did not see a named storm impact. It's honestly, for some people, it's been more than a year. It's been a couple years. For example, Florida, a wonderful example, down where Hurricane Ian hit. We've been chilling since Hurricane Ian, thankfully. I know a lot of people don't want an impact, but I'm just saying there's a lot of folks out there who just unfortunately don't know any better, and they could sometimes get into that narrow-minded grind set is what I call it, and they forget all about hurricane season, especially with all the sensationalism and all the media blowing it up. Hyper, 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 hyper. Willow gets hyper when she has her zoomies. Does that mean that she's hyperactive? I guess so. So I really wish that people would stop putting so much energy and emphasis into talking about the season and simply just communicate the season. And when I say that, I mean when it starts. Stop emphasizing it's going to be bad, it's going to be bad. It's because now even I'm feeling it. I'm already feeling it. All this talk of this is going to be crazy. We're going to be so busy. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm bored. Like, I kind of want something to talk about already. Is anything going to happen? And that's how everyone is going to feel, especially in the meteorological sector. When you turn it over to the general viewers like you guys, that gets dangerous because you have all the folks like me emphasizing how hyperactive it's going to be, and then when nothing happens, you're going to switch off immediately. You're going to switch off, and everybody out there who really doesn't care too much is immediately going to assume all you other people are wrong. This is the only job that you can get paid and be wrong X amount of times, X% of the time. I'm turning you off. I don't want to hear it anymore. You're just making up stuff. You're just trying to give views. And then when it really hits, if you guys remember the good old classic folktale, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, if you constantly keep saying major development, hyperactive, extreme, look out, no one's going to look out. Everyone's going to stop. And I think we're slowly getting there. I'm personally already getting there. That's kind of also, I'd say 80% of it is science and what I'm looking at. 20% is I'm just discouraged. All this discussion, all these big names out there mentioning, yeah, we're going to get 30, 40, 75 named storms. Like, what, are they going to have? Are there going to be 10 named storms out there at one time? Because so far, I don't see anything. I don't see anything worth communicating. I don't see anything worth getting crazy about, warning people about. The only area that I'm monitoring very closely is Mexico, because that is the one area where we do have a pretty solid vote of confidence that something is going to happen. You take us through the 0Z European model, and you can see the Euro doesn't really give that area out there a solid chance of forming up into something. This is interesting. This guy right there, I think that's what the ensemble probabilities are predicting, could try to take on a little bit of tropical characteristics. It's in more of our cooler waters up there, so I'm not quite sure. If I did not know I did not know this was a thing, by the way, guys. I got to remember how to do this. Is it Control S? There we go. Yeah, look at this. I did not know this was a thing until Atlantic Hurricane, I forget the username specifically, Atlantic Hurricane Watch showed me this, that you can actually take cross sections and take a look at exactly if this system is cold core, warm core, mixed, etc. I love this, and I definitely want to start using this a little bit more often, because this will definitely help to give us a better idea of whether or not something has that vertical stack that we want to see in an aggressive tropical wave, or in a system that wants to develop into something more than just a tropical wave. So right now, I switched over to the GFS. Unfortunately, the GFS doesn't even have anything out there, so that remains to be seen. We'll have to wait and see exactly what happens. I'm seeing a little bit of a temperature gradient with it, very weak. I'm seeing some cool air funneling in on the side here, warm air being pulled up if you look at our red thickness lines, the red dashed lines. So could possibly be a subtropical system, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that instead of getting development down here, we get it up here. You know, it's definitely doable. We're getting into that time of year where it is 100% doable. The Canadian model, we switch on over to this puppy. We're not really seeing anything down there in the Caribbean, but it still has its eye set on Tropical Storm Aletta trying to form. It's off the chart, if I'm not mistaken. But if you notice, we go all the way to the tail end, and there's really not a lot of moisture out there in the Caribbean. None whatsoever. If you switch over to the Eastern Pacific, though, and you go back in time, actually, look at that. The Canadian... Oh, wait, no, this is... Why is that so old? Why was that so old? Uh-oh, I might have to switch this around. There you go. Canadian model is definitely on board with Tropical Storm Aletta coming together, at least for a brief period, before she runs headfirst into what's left of our El Nino subtropical shear to the north. That's weird. Let me go back to our Euro model. No, that's up to date. Why was the Canadian model set to 9Z? I mean, the 9th still. That's odd. And this has been trending. If you come back to our 12Z yesterday, you can see it was trying to form something up, and we get a little bit more activity right along the Pacific monsoonal trough. The Canadian model has been very back and forth with it. If you come to 0Z, 0Z seems to be the favored one, and this is what I'm talking about. They've been windshield wipering back and forth quite a bit, trying to take it up into Mexico. And if we switch over to our Icon model, the Icon as well is doing much of the same thing. We'll start on the Eastern Pacific side. We'll go back to 0Z this morning, and you take it through time. This has been probably our most consistent model. Thankfully, it is somewhat... No, it hasn't. Never mind. I just lied to you guys, and I apologize. I was going to say it has thankfully backed off on its intensity, but it really hasn't. The intensity has also been there. It's trying to develop it into a hurricane. I really don't know if it's going to become a hurricane. I don't see how it could become a hurricane unless we get just that favorable of an upper-level environment, which is definitely doable. I've been looking at that anticyclone at 500 and 300 millibars that's going to help to nudge our shear vectors to the north. A lot of our major wind shear, and I can switch us back over to the GFS as well, is going to maintain itself over the south, which is why here in the United States, we're just going to keep getting blasted by rain events and severe weather events. But we'll go back to the GFS just to show you a second, real quick, what the general thinking is. If we go to our upper levels and we go to our shear, notice how we're left with quite a bit of anticyclonic rotation out there. You get that ridge to build in the subtropical ridge, and then there goes all of our jet, all of our upper level wind shear just coming across the southern plains, the southern United States, into the state of Florida, where we actually look like we have a pretty good shot of difluence. And this is next weekend, not this weekend, a pretty good area of difluent flow that might try to instigate another round of good thunderstorm activity for the southeast. But there you go. She's right inside that donut, as we like to call it, the donut of an anticyclone, right underneath where all that rising motion is going to be. So the science is there for us to see development. It's just a matter of if it'll execute and take full advantage, which last year we really didn't see too much of that. And now, just because I'm a part of the Navy, I like to pull up the NavGem. This is our Navy weather model. We'll go back to 0Z and see if we're far enough in time to see what happens out there. And no, we're not. We only go out to the 20th. The NavGem has a little bit of a small circulation out there, and then it gets washed out completely. Nothing in our Western Atlantic or the Caribbean. We have some pretty good moisture moving through, like I said. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, look at that. Lines up perfectly with that little miniature forecast I just gave you guys with that shear. Look at how the difluent flow we saw on the wind shear model was present over the southeast, and we're getting a lot of good moisture and a possible low pressure that's moving off the east coast. See, it's those little things. It's those little things, and I promise I'm not trying to gloat or sound like I know. It's those type of things where you just recognize certain patterns and you can put together a minuscule, very generalized forecast and communicate it to your viewers. And you guys saw, you can fact check me. All I did was see, oh, look at that difluent flow, the splitting of the air over there. And then there you go, expecting thunderstorms for southeast. This is where we stand with our anomalies. So actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and do it on Tropical Tidbits. We're getting towards the back end of our briefing. Almost done, guys. El Nino is gone. El Nino is trying its best. We're at plus 003. So... and you can see that so far in terms of what our climate models are predicting, they have been very accurate, very, very steady decrease. I know there was a little bit of a ebb and flow right in through there. That's just natural with water. You're dealing with water. It's obviously going to move around. But we mentioned that April was going to be our telltale sign. If April things aren't going away, they're probably not going to go away. And we hit it right on the money. So did our climate models and everyone else, CPZ, all the other meteorologists out there who have been advertising that El Nino is going to die once we roll to the end of March, and especially into April and May will be bon voyage. And we've seen it. We're right there, and you can see it's going to try to do its thing. Over the next couple of days, just looking at the pattern here, don't be surprised if it tries to nudge its way back up into a bit of those positive anomalies. Not enough to be considered an El Nino. We would need to go all the way back up past 0.5 to be considered a weak Nino, so... that would be very spectacular if it did climb that high again. I don't think it's going to, but we'll watch as it goes back and forth. If you look and out there over the Atlantic, and I'll zoom us in just a little bit so you guys can see better, and I'll move my head to the top. There you go. There's our La Nina trying to show itself. And as you can see, even that area I'd mentioned off of Central America and Mexico, we have cooling starting to take effect. And I do think that our PDO to the north is going to merge with our La Nina, and that could possibly spell danger. The only sensationalist term that I'm going to put out there for the East Coast and the Caribbean. Because if you think about it, we have ridging over our positive anomalies and then troughing over our negatives, so we're going to have a bit more of a ridge built in out over the Atlantic. With a little bit of troughing, maybe we'll see like a bit of a... might see a bit of a ridge build in here with a weak trough over the coastline and then a strong ridge where all those warm anomalies are. We'll have to wait and see exactly how the pattern sets up and see what our North American, North Atlantic, I always say that, see what our North Atlantic oscillation does. It looks like our North Atlantic oscillation might stay in a negative pattern the entire time, or a negative, I always get that one confused. Either a negative or a positive pattern, because you can see the cold anomalies to the north supporting our semi-permanent low-pressure system up there, and then our warmer anomalies supporting our ridge. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. What's up, mamas? And then we'll take a look at our... let me see. Where do I have it? Here we go. So as you can see, even on NOAA's website, this is their derived tropical cyclone activity. The NOAA products are going high. The NOAA products have a very good shot that we could see some development out there in the Eastern Pacific with a little bit of very minuscule bleed over into the Caribbean. Very little. Not much worth, talking about, worrying about. We're mainly focusing on our Eastern Pacific for the time being. Oh, do we not have our ocean heat content? Let's go back in time. Is it here on? There we go. So this is where it's getting a little bit more concerning. If you guys look at our ocean heat content, we're still slowly but surely building. We're definitely building our ocean heat content, which could possibly be a bad thing. If we keep our Atlantic basin, to include the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, quiet for a good period of time, that could result in even more sea surface heating. And what that does is it'll eventually bleed over into our ocean heat content. So one could argue that the fact that we have not seen very much going on out there in the Atlantic just yet could be why it is that our Gulf of Mexico is as warm as it is. Look at the night and day difference, Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer. If you're still there, I remember you asking back in April, when will the Gulf of Mexico get warm? Well, buddy, there you have it. There, I hope that answers your question beautifully. And as you can see, where our hottest anomalies are is right around where we're expecting the enhancement from both of our line echo patterns that are going to be moving through. And look at how our Caribbean is warming up pretty good. The Western MDR is warming up pretty good. So I do think that we're going to have very favorable conditions out here as we get into the bona fide tropical season. Right now, we're not doing a whole lot. We have a lot of dust out there. In fact, just for shoots and giggles, before we run up on the 45 after time, I'll show you guys the dust chart. I should probably just incorporate this into the brief. I don't know why I don't have it attached. But if you look, as we highlighted on the satellite, you can see that... What's up, mamas? She's listening closely. You can see that the dust plume is holding on out there in the Atlantic. Oh, look at that. Whoa. Hey. Now I see why the models think that there is a shot at some possible development out there. Look at that. We're going to see a little bit of our waning in the dust pattern. I need to take note of this. So from the 16th right about to the 19th, I'm going to write this down. What's up, mamas? I got to write this down because I want to do some research behind the scenes away from you guys. Because I've been trying to... Whoops, bump my mic. Sorry if I just clobbered your ears, anybody. I've been wanting to do some studying behind the scenes about the Saharan dust to try to pick up on... Mamas, look out. Are you going to give the rest of the brief? I've been wanting to do some research behind the scenes, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity to do so because we see that between the 16th and the 20th of May, our Saharan dust is going to calm down, which tells me that there is obviously something going on with our Africa, northern half of the African pattern and our tropics that are going to turn the dust off for a little bit. So I want to try to do some scrutinizing behind the scenes to see if I can pick up on what it is that's going to shut it down. Because then that'll definitely help us moving forward, even if it's a week, 2-week basis, or, whoa, my Mike Tyson showed, even if it's a 1 to 2 week routine or rhythm, we can try to get a bit of an idea of when we should forecast our Saharan dust to really kick back in and when it'll go away again. So let's see. Well, I'll have that on the back burner for later, because then it looks like our entire Atlantic, the entire area is going to be clear. For all intents and purposes. We're not going to have a lot of dust out there. So from the 23rd of May, and even just before that, from the 20th, we'll say the 20th to about the 26th, if there's going to be anything developing down here or down here at all, this would be one of the opportune times to do it. Let's see if our wind shear is expected to back off at all, because if that's not going to back off, then, well, shucks, there's not going to be anything. Even if we don't have the dry, dusty air out there to worry about, we're not going to be able to execute anything worthwhile. So let's go out to the North Atlantic. Let me clear my ink and see. So there's May 19th. Not really. Not too much. Not too much. Can kind of see, though, it looks like El Nino is turning itself off as we get ready to roll into June, though. Let's see if the CFS Weekly echoes that same thing. Let's go to our 200 shear anomaly. Let's see. There's May 13th. This is May 27th through the 1st of June. And then there you go. Yeah, so, our shear is expected to start to lighten up a little bit as we get into the first half of June. So if you guys wanted my honest prognosis right now, I would definitely think that June is probably going to be our hype month, for lack of a better term. And I don't mean we're going to hype things up, but I mean like everyone's going to be jumping on the bandwagon, and we're going to see recurring tropical updates come back. Some folks out there I feel like are not doing tropical updates on a repetitive basis because they may think that they're wasting time because there's nothing to hype. But I think that also weeds out who you can count on and who you can't really count on. The moment people jump on the tropical update bandwagon, you can tell that that's all it is a bandwagon. They're jumping in because it's the trend. They want to pick up some views. They want to pick up some subscribers. That's the reason I promised you guys we were going to be getting started with our tropical updates as early as May, just to be on the safe side. Even if we don't get any activity, doesn't mean we're not going to stop. It doesn't mean we're just going to stop tropical updates altogether. We're going to keep going all the way to the start of hurricane season. And we'll see, Dan. We'll definitely see. I'm not seeing much out there right now, at least for the Atlantic side. The Pacific side, 110%. I really do think that Pacific is going to go off. We're going to be right on schedule with developing our first named storm. Aletta is going to be out there before we know it. We'll see on the 15th if NHC jumps on board as well with a little blip, and that'll be the big determinant. Once it does, I've been noticing that we have a lot of new viewers and a lot of returning viewers, and I want to just give you the disclaimer. I want to give you this, I guess, beware. The moment we get, you saw it already. We saw that early disturbance in April, and everything exploded. The moment we get our first yellow indicator, you really need to buckle down and find who it is you're going to ride this hurricane season out with. Because the moment the blips start showing up, and I'm talking our probabilities, our designations, yellow, orange, red, our PTCs, our areas of interest, our disturbance, 95, 90L, etc. Once those pop up, YouTube and social media is going to go crazy. YouTube and all the socials are going to go absolutely off the chain. There's going to be so many people saying, here we go. The start of the hurricane season, the start of a historic hyperactivity is coming in, and you got to watch out because we saw it a lot last year. Last year, I will always remember it, and I'm going to always call it this. Last year was the hype season. Last year, there was a lot of stuff going on, but it really didn't warrant as much excitement as it did. It did not warrant as much excitement as it did. Even the stuff that formed in the Caribbean, I get that we had a lot of flooding, but apples to oranges. Would you rather flooding or would you rather a Category 3 hurricane? Then, don't explode on the first chance you get. Let it build up. So that's how we'll end the live stream. Right now, confidence is continuing to slowly grow and simmer in the Eastern Pacific. We could have our first tropical storm within the next week and a half. Atlantic side of things, the Caribbean and the Gulf are warming up. We're seeing it rapidly warm up, especially the Gulf of Mexico. So if we do get any homegrown systems early in June or even into June altogether, that could pose a problem for a lot of people on the Gulf coastline. It could take some folks by surprise, especially with how much of a fire hose of tropical storm information is flying around out there. Oh, no, Kevin, I meant when I say ride out the storm, I mean who you're going to be watching for your information. That's what I meant. I don't mean who you're going to physically ride out stuff that hits you. I mean pick and choose, because very, very soon, just like I saw an X post not too long ago that was perfect. And it was Homer Simpson. If you guys have seen that meme where Homer Simpson's like this and slowly backs into the hedgerow and then pops back out. Perfect, because it said tornado expert. And then slowly backed in, and then came out, space weather expert. That's exactly what's going to happen. Everybody out there who is a severe weather expert right now, everyone who knows how to forecast tornadoes, they're suddenly going to blow up the tropics and be like, yep, so this is what's going on, this is what we got to watch for, and there's suddenly going to be tropical meteorology subject matter experts. I am not a tropical meteorology subject matter expert, but I can openly admit I am working every single day, whether I'm still working on college stuff. Right now we're on a break, so every bit of time that I would have been dedicating to college work for my degree is now going to extracurricular weather information, tropical meteorology. So I'm doing my best to spin myself up on as much as I can to try to bring some subject matter knowledge to you guys as we go through the hurricane season. This is not going to be a channel to where we're looking at one model run and hyping up. No, we're not going to do that. I'm only going to advertise something to you guys if I see credible circumstantial evidence that you should be watching it. Never is this channel going to suddenly come out and be like, oh, we got our first model run. This is it. Start talking about it. Worry. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to be okay. We're going to keep up with the trends. The tricky part, as we communicated on Friday before we cut for the weekend, is how far out do I want to try to advertise? How far out do I want to try to forecast? And that's why I've been studying to try to get better at this stuff so I can try to give you guys as far out of an idea of what's going to happen as possible. So yeah, that's my key takeaway here. Eastern Pacific, we're getting ready. Caribbean and Gulf, Atlantic, still waiting. We're still at a standstill. Nothing to really be concerned about. If you guys come across a video out there that mentions that there's something big on the horizon, you either, if you want to get excited about something, then have at it. If you really, I don't know. I don't see anything at all for the rest of the month right now as it stands. And as I've mentioned in previous live streams, that could change. Weather is constantly changing. Our models clearly are all over the place. We're still early into May. We're about halfway through May, so you never know. This time next week, we may have something to look at. But as of right now, I can confidently say, and it's not because I don't want to get excited. I do. I want to see something. I want us to talk about something relevant and really focus in and start telling people and educating what could possibly happen. But right now, for the next for the rest of the month, I don't see anything. I don't see anything for our Caribbean. I don't see anything for the Gulf of Mexico. I don't see anything out in the Atlantic. I don't see anything for Bermuda. I really don't. The Eastern Pacific is going to steal the spotlight for at least another 7 days, and then we'll see what happens once NHC steps in on the 15th. So if you see anybody out there, because I know a lot of you guys like to watch other weather pages, and it's no offense taken at all, but if you find another weather source that you start watching and they're suddenly telling you, we're watching for development, ask them in the comments, what are you looking at? Because I literally just took you through everything I could. I showed you the ensembles, I showed you the probabilities, I showed you each of our models, I showed you the temperatures, I showed you the shear. Like, there's nothing out there. There's nothing expected to be out there. So I guess we will wait and see. That's all we're going to have to do is wait and see. But that's that, guys. Severe weather in the southeast we'll have to keep a close eye on throughout the day, and tropical development potential growing slowly but surely, like a pot of water slowly coming up to a simmer and eventually a boil out there in the Eastern Pacific. Could we have Tropical Storm Aletta over the next week or two? Definitely seems like it. Those are signals that you'd want to latch onto, not an individual run that suddenly has a low here and the next thing you know the low is on the other side of the planet. You don't do that. Those signals out there in the East Pac are a lot more confident than they are in the Caribbean. So we're still in a holding pattern for our Atlantic viewers, our Eastern Pacific viewers. If you are out there, then we're watching closely, especially for you guys out in Mexico. We don't need anything to come sneaking in this early, this quick. We haven't even had a year yet. I think we're about like 9-10 months, if that, from when Hurricane Otis hit out there. I believe it's been 9 to 10 months now. It was was it a September or an October storm? I want to say it was October, but I could be wrong. Let's go ahead. We'll do that real quick, and then we'll cut the live stream. I got to start getting ready for work, get some food in me. Let's see. When was Hurricane Otis? Hurricane Otis was, let's see right here. So what? Wow, yeah, so it was a late October storm. It was right around the Halloween time frame when Otis hit. So we have only had maybe 9 to 10 months before another storm tries to work its way up in there. And it's unfortunate because it does seem like if we're looking at just this window here, some of our models, our ensembles, want to track this bad boy right up in there. Now, obviously, it's not going to be anything near Otis strength or anything like that in the realm of possibility. But regardless, they don't need that type of stuff while they're still trying to fuel recovery efforts and keep that moving. So thank you all very much for being such an outstanding audience. As always, I love having each and every one of you to join me for these morning tropical updates. We're going to continue this on a repetitive basis Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And as I've briefed to you guys before, we'll only go up in content if there are things to talk about. We'll never limit ourselves to just the 3, and we'll never go down below the 3. If there are big things happening in the United States weather sphere, we will definitely start talking a little bit more about what's going on in the CONUS side of things on our nightly briefings. I know I haven't been doing them. That's just number one, because I haven't had the time to. But number two, because there really hasn't been a big need for it. Let's be real here. This channel gets completely squashed by some of the bigger ones out there who are actually storm chasing, who are broadcasting with their thousands of viewers. So I'll mind my business and I'll stay in my lane, as I like to call it. And, we'll stick to our bread and butter here. So we'll see you guys again on Wednesday. If you have the ability to do so, follow me on my X, my Twitter, my Instagram, and my TikTok for more recurring updates, more low-threat things I can get out to you guys on a repetitive basis. And we will be back here in the Weather Center on at 9 a.m. on Wednesday the 15th to see exactly what National Hurricane Center has for us. They might have a yellow blip, they might not. They may have it mentioned in their discussion. It could be a situation like Storm Prediction Center where they have predictability is too low right now. But we'll see. Sometimes they slap a designation on whatever they want, so I would be shocked if they didn't have anything on the 15th or at least on the 16th or the 17th with what we have going on out there. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them in the comments section of this live stream, and reach out to me on any other social media platform if you want. I'll definitely make it a point to get back to you. I'm actually finding better time slots now to get back to comments and messages on a more repetitive pattern, which is good. I like communicating with you guys. But that's all she wrote. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you have a great start to the middle of May. It is now officially the second full week of May. We are right in the middle per the calendar. And we're getting there. I mean, regardless of if we get any May activity, we know June is probably not going to disappoint. And if it does, then it's either going to be a spooky hurricane season or something isn't right. So we'll see. We'll have plenty of time to talk more. But until next time, guys, thanks, David. Hope everyone has a wonderful day. Twilight Firefly 100, thank you so much. Severe weather ongoing. Tornado risk is lower than last week, but flooding and wind damage and hail remains. I still think that there is a tornado risk for sure. Not a widespread tornado risk, but these fast-moving lines of storms can create their own little areas of stretched vorticity. So that is something we need to watch, especially for our friends in the Panhandle and along the Gulf coastline with that moisture feed from the south helping to intensify these storms. We could have localized effects that help to increase their intensity that aren't indicated by the models. It would not be the first time, but that's a whole other story in itself, guys. We'll see you again on Wednesday. Until then, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.